what I would caution my sales leaders with here and my managers is stop defaulting. You've probably, to this point, been on default most of your life. You have rested on your talents and your abilities. And here's the problem. The more talented you are, the less you're going to hear this. The more ability you have to go out and earn what you need to earn by yourself, the less you're going to hear this. But being the example is not enough. Executing the example is everything.
Great experiences build great leaders. Great leaders build great teams. This is Building Great Sales Teams.
All right, guys, welcome back to Building Great Sales Teams. This will be the first episode in roughly 3 weeks. 3 weeks, yeah. First of all, I want to apologize for not getting these episodes out like I should. For you guys that have been listening for a few years now, definitely want to apologize to you guys. But things have been a little crazy on the home front, so I want to give you guys an update. Had a lot of things going on, and just had the best month ever last month in consulting. And, you know, as we all do, we get caught up in fulfillment, and we slow down on the content. We slow down on the posting. We slow down on the podcasts. And so it is 4:37 p.m. on a Monday. I would normally be driving home from the office right now to get home with the family, but I decided I need to get back on the podcast. So I decided to spend it here with you guys instead. And so, you know, one of the things I love is passive content. And what I mean by that is content that is original and is created passively because you're not running through the ABCs. You're running through your actual business and deriving your ideas from that. You know, I just got off a call with a software company, and you know, it's a tracking software, and it gives you analytics and stuff like that. And you know, I was encouraging her to really dive into creating her personal brand and putting more content out. You know, because that's how I was able to just have my biggest month ever in consulting. Is my personal brand preceded itself, and in terms of the actual consulting sales, I would say I'm in the neighborhood of 85% closing rate overall, which is, you know, no matter what sale you're in, is incredibly solid. But high ticket is really good. And especially as discerning as I've been, it's really, really good, right? That 15% was probably my choice, right? At this point. And so I was encouraging her, build a personal brand, do more content. And one of the things that I said is do passive content. You're on all these discovery calls. You're on all these connection calls with potential partners like me. And why not record those, make sure it's a high quality recording, 1080p, and then edit those into reels, you know. And obviously you only do one side of the conversation. So this is just an easy strategy to create content. You know, for people like me that suck at the calculated, like, written stuff or the, like, staged content. Well, I never had to get good at it because I always had passive content. I always had a podcast, and I always had consulting calls to drive reels from. So if you guys aren't doing that and you have a product that you could execute that with, I would strongly encourage it. So let's get into the subject for today. I was on a leadership call, and you know, they asked if I had anything to add, and that's my job, to add things, to give advice, right? And this particular company, I wanted to encourage them basically to follow the system. Here's what happens with your leadership and us as sales leaders. Here's something that happens. We default, okay? And you know, that's the title of this episode, is for you to stop defaulting, essentially. And the reason I say that is because I spent, I would say, 15 years in default mode. Fortunately, in the world of business, at least, God bless me. God bless me with, this ability to think on my feet, to problem solve, to handle things as they come, right? And that'll get you to a certain point. For me, I would say my peak was around 5 million, right? And it'll get you to a certain point, and then once you're at that point, you got to make a decision. Am I going to make adjustments to scale? Am I going to make adjustments to get higher quality out of life, out of my business, or am I going to go another route, or am I going to continue to default and continue to have the same business that I've had for a while? I chose, once I peaked out, I would say in 22, I chose to go into consulting to have a higher quality business, right? Um, but what happens often is we reach a certain amount of success, we peak, and then we go to a valley again. And the valley is not always a bad thing. The valley is only a bad thing when you don't make adjustments and come out of the valley. The valley is a good thing. The valley tells you the truth. It tells you that, hey, what you built was good, but there's some holes in your game. And this valley is where you get to find out, all right, where were the holes in the game? Reinforce those. And so the next time you peak, it will be more than the previous peak, right? The value has so much, and I keep saying it backwards, the valley has so much value. Maybe that should be the name of this episode. But no, I'm going to speak to defaulting because that's what created this problem in the first place, right? So here's what happens. Somebody comes in, and this is very much going to mirror the sophomore slump, but with higher level individuals painted in. Okay, so in the sophomore slump, a salesperson comes in, does really well for 2 to 3 weeks, and then hits a wall. They hit the wall because it's no longer exciting. It's no longer a new job. It's no longer a new product. Now they have to do the monotonous day in and day out things that reflect discipline, right? And when discipline gets involved for salespeople, especially like the natural born ones, they're not going to be very good at that part. They have to have something exciting. They got to get the juices flowing somehow. And if there's not a new product, a new commission, a new bonus, a new gimmick, they typically are going to flare out, I guess you could say. So when they flare out, essentially what's happening is they stop doing the things that made them successful in the first place. The problem is they didn't realize that working a certain amount of hours, knocking a certain amount of doors, making a certain amount of phone calls, or sending a certain amount of DMs is what was making them successful. They thought that it was the energy, the buzz, the ability that they had behind it, right? Initially, when you come into a sales position for the first time, you were the worst you're ever going to be, right? But why is it that all those sales positions are always, in the beginning, they always produce more? These are entry-level sales positions, ones that are high volume maybe. They always end up producing more because they do the right amount of reps. They follow the model. They stop following the model, and then they fall off. It's what I call a sophomore slump. I have a whole episode about it. So check that out if you have not heard that. But what I want to go into is when you have key players in the company, managers usually, for whatever reason, right? You put together a good system, a model, right? You put together a good script, a sales process, all that good stuff. And what happens all too often is the valley will start, right? And the difference between a manager and a key player, I guess is what I'm going to call it. The difference between a manager and a key player is a manager will do what a manager does, and they will strong arm it, okay? And the way that they strong arm it is they go out to the field and they lead their guys. They go out to the field and they lead their guys, right? But what happens in doing that is they now become the field leader instead of the leader in the office, right? And when they're out in the field doing field things, the things in the office aren't getting done. The meetings aren't getting ran on time. They're not being planned. Training's not getting coordinated. Recruits, onboarding, opportunity meetings, all these things that work on the office side of the business usually fall by the wayside. And what happens is they start adjusting the system based on this new role that they gave themselves. Okay, so they start adjusting the system based on this new role they gave themselves instead of following the system that everybody designed and worked really well, whether it was the regional, the CEO, whatever the case was. And so they start going in and strong arming it. And don't get me wrong, that has its place if you have really good leadership in place. But at the end of the day, if your middle management, as a manager, if your middle management can't step up and strong arm that for you, then you're in trouble, right? And typically that's where you'll see it happen too. Instead of the managers making the assistant managers or team leads, whatever you want to call it, instead of them holding them to a standard of bridging that gap of increasing their sales in the fields, being consistent in the office, of stepping up into leadership roles, they will allow them to basically dictate terms, dictate adjustments to the system, right? And look, I know how I come off. I came off that way in my sales org for 13 years. I know exactly how I come off in this, and I get it. I get it. This does not, no top level salesperson wants to hear this, but that's why they're only ever going to be top level salespeople. Let's just be honest. Let's call a spade a spade. If you don't understand what I'm talking about right now, if you can't grab hold of the fact that you changing the system so you can hit your paycheck is detrimental to the company and the actual expansion, real scale, then you're just going to be a top level salesperson. You're not a manager. Okay. Managers understand that they have a system in place and they have to tweak the system in order to get the scale, right? And if they do it properly, and I explained this to my clients today, when done properly, there's amazing benefits to it. All right. Nothing lasts forever, but when we were running our systems properly at Argenta Field Solutions, my VP, my regionals, most of my managers were all six-figure earners. And it was rare that those managers, unless they were brand new managers in their first 90 to 120 days, it was rare that those managers made a lot of sales. They probably made 3 or 4 sales a week, while a regular sales rep was making 10 to 14, right? And so they were able to earn 6 figures and work 30 to 35 hours a week. As long as they ran the system to a T and they ran it well. And it's not so much that the system is the reason for the success. It's the collaboration and the cohesiveness and everybody knowing where everybody's at and what everybody's doing at any given time is the reason for the success. It's knowing that if I turn this dial up, that's going to bring my recruiting quality down. If I turn this dial down, it'll be my recruiting quality up, but I'll have less people coming in the office. So the perception is the opportunity is not as good, and so on and so forth. We get to then play with the dials as visionaries should. That's a visionary's job, is to go in and tweak the system and piss off the integrator. But those tweaks that they're making have long-term effects, whether it's a raise in quality metrics, whether it's a raise in headcount, whether it's lowering the headcount, but a raise in earnings per rep. So what I would caution my sales leaders with here and my managers is stop defaulting. You've probably to this point been on default most of your life. You have rested on your talents and your abilities. And here's the problem. The more talented you are, the less you're going to hear this. The more ability you have to go out and earn what you need to earn by yourself, the less you're going to hear this. But being the example is not enough. Executing the example is everything. Executing the example, right? As a manager, I'm not an example to my middle management or my sales leaders or my sales trainers or my assistant managers, whatever your titling is. I'm not an example to them if I'm not executing the very system that they need to execute when they get in my position. And how can they execute it if I'm using my ability, my talents, I'm jumping all over the place, if I'm not consistent in the office, if I'm not consistent in the way that I train, if I'm not consistent in the way that I recruit, what example do they really have to follow? They have an example of somebody that is very talented, can fire some salespeople up, can go out and make a bunch of sales. You know what I mean? Has this ability to the big swinging, you know what, in the company, right? But those aren't the guys that last, unfortunately. They always find an excuse as to why they're not successful when they just stop executing the system. And so like more of these episodes are going to be as I get deeper and deeper into the roles that I'm in at the end of this year and then next year. It's going to be more of this stuff, pulling the deep work I'm doing with my clients from that and giving you guys basically what we went through on those calls. And it's going to get a lot more raw and real because I'm going to do very little guest episodes. I lean on guest episodes for a long time. You guys know that's how I developed my podcast partners business. Is I had, me and my team, Nika and Elle, and in the past, Kathy, we all created this beautiful system that I was able to record 3 episodes a week and have all this content coming out for you guys and everything. But I think we're moving to the quality over quantity, 1 episode a week. And those episodes are going to be recorded by yours truly with things like this. So if I were to sum up this episode, I would very much say it's this: stop defaulting to your talent and your ability and start scaling to the strength of your system. I'm going to say it one more time. Stop defaulting to your talent and your ability and start scaling to the strength of your system. That's for the sales leaders. For the owners, for the business owners, that sales is just one division of your company. It's the same thing. Stop defaulting to your talents and the strength of your abilities and start scaling to the strength of your business. And within that business is systems and SOPs. And you guys know I love talking about those. But this is happening too much, and I see it happen all the time, especially with sales leaders and managers that are incredibly talented. It's too easy for them to just jump down a level in terms of top title, in terms of role and responsibility, high role, and then jump back up into their position after they've fixed everything. Problem is, you haven't given your people the ability to run the system that made you successful in the first place. You jumped down, you saved their asses, and now, in your mind, you're too important to lose in the company, but all you've done is stifled the company's growth, honestly. So that's what I've got for you guys this week. Like I said, I'm gonna do everything I can to get you guys 1 episode a week at least. That's gonna come directly from me. They're mainly gonna be solo episodes. And I guess I need to fill you guys in as well on and maybe I haven't done this yet. No, I know I haven't done it yet. And so I'll go ahead and walk through it right now. And it's funny because I was typing out a social media post today about this very thing, And so about 6 weeks ago, I did a discovery call with a company, and they attempted to put together a door-to-door sales team. They had over 200 reps on this team. It didn't go well. And when I looked at their model, I realized that, hey, you guys aren't really built to manage a 200-person door-to-door sales team, right? I've managed a 100-person one, and that's all we did. You guys are this whole business. You're trying to move into direct sales, consumer sales, and I think you need to let the experts do that for you, right? So I started putting together this dealer model, and then I presented it to them and the CEO of the company. And keep in mind, this is this company will do 9 figures next year, no problem. The CEO of the company says, "Hey, Doug, I want you to come internal and do this for us. What would that look like?" And that was tough for me at first. Immediately it was a no, right? I didn't tell him that. I just said, "Hey, this is what I'm doing in my consulting business. Basically y'all would have to replace that. And then I'd have to see the upside. I'd have to have commission on whatever I built out, so on and so forth." So I gave him some loose terms. Great conversation. And I hopped off the call and I immediately called some people that I trust. One of those people uh, posed me with a few questions that got me really thinking. And so this company's already went through a few rounds of VC, venture capital, if you don't know what that is, and uh, they've raised 8 figures already, and they're going to do a 9 figure raise soon, and or they're getting a 9 figure raise soon. And so he asked me, "Have you ever met anybody that's raised that amount of money?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not outside of real estate. No." And it was like lifetime they've raised that amount of money. And then he also asked me, "Have you ever met anybody that's taken a company to IPO?" He's like, "Not assuming that you're taking the company to IPO, but you would be a part of that team that took a company to IPO or acquisition." And I said, "No, I've never been part of that. I know a few people that have done that." And, Neil Kaiser, yeah, plenty of companies been acquired, but not for, the amounts that it would take to acquire this company, right? And so I know a few people that have pulled that off, but not much. He's like, "Okay, what would that learning experience do for you?" And that really hit me. I was like, because at first it's all ego. It's I'll never work for anybody. I mean, and granted, I'm that person. I got fired from my first 20 jobs, and ever since I've had several businesses before Argenta, but ever since Argenta, I've never had any other title or position other than consultant. And so we're talking about 15 years of doing things a certain way, and so that started bringing me around. And I started thinking about it. It's like, okay, if I go work with this company for, let's just say 5 years and I exit or something like that, and I pull off a 7-figure exit, because one of the terms was stocks too, right? So it started making more and more sense. And the more that I prayed about it, I talked to my wife about it, and I thought about, okay, what is the lifestyle I have now that I'm so holding on hard to, right? And at this time, the consulting business is taking off again. Lots of hours, lots of early mornings, a few late nights, but mainly early mornings, And I mean like waking up at 4:30 and working by 5 and having the first client call at 9. It's like I got to get this stuff done, right? And so everything that I'm coveting right now is my autonomy and my freedom, you know what I mean? But I'm working 50, 55 hours a week either way. And so that really went out the door. And then the upside, as far as like, okay, when you're own business, the upside of acquisition, well, that doesn't happen in consulting, not unless you build out a consulting business with a large group of people or like for that purpose. And I wasn't doing that because I wanted the autonomy. I didn't want a team, right? And so the next step was a visit. I went and visited their offices. They're based out of Addison, Texas. And so I went and visited their offices. I had to be remote, but I definitely wanted to come to the office at least once a month. So I went and visited their offices, saw the culture, saw the people, was very excited about everything that I saw. They have a beautiful building, name on the side of the building, the whole deal, like beautiful space, and they've got maybe a third filled out. So a lot of room for expansion opportunity. They're investing heavily in growing this company. And so that's exciting. I would be the only division that was focused on direct to consumer, or direct sales, I should say. And so the opportunity itself, this division could do 5 to 10 million next year. When I think about that, it's like, shoot, I only ever did 5 million as a small business owner in a year. The idea that I could create something that did 5 to 10 million, and the lives that it would impact, and the example that I would set, and the experience that would give me. As I kept going through and I prayed and I talked to my wife, it just made more and more sense, right? And let's not forget the stability piece of it, right? Because you guys have been through some of the hardest times with me, and about 3 or 4 months into consulting, and then for the following year, and then it's been really good, a lot better this year, but there were some hard times in there, so that's a factor. I'm not going to act like it's not. And so I ended up making the decision after the visit to go in full time. We went back and forth on terms. They met. Some didn't meet others, and that's part of it, right? And so I'm incredibly excited about the opportunity that I have in front of me. Two things that aren't changing. I'm still going to consult. I made sure that was a term in my agreement, and I'm still going to do this podcast. And I still have my other business podcast partners, and so that keeps my pulse in what's happening in small business. And now I'm working with a medium-sized business, so I'm excited to bring what we're doing in that business to you guys when it's appropriate, when it makes sense, when it's not proprietary, right? But just so you guys know that business is ChexAM. ChexAM is a company. They're a sustainability company. And the reason that I got excited about them is because of what they're doing in that space. And for everything that we hear about climate change and renewables and sustainability, they are actually doing something about it. They are the logistics behind people actually getting this stuff done, real recycling happening. I mean, they're going to do everything from solar panel recycling to e-waste to power washing to bulk junk removal to open top, all the things you can think of. They're doing it right now for B2B, and we're going to bring it to the direct sales space. And I'm going to make sure that this platform is one of the things that we use to do that, because it is a huge opportunity. This is not something that any salesperson is going to focus solely on. It's more going to be like, hey, I see the opportunity. I see that you have this, these tablets you need to get rid of. I see that you have these solar panels that need to be pressure washed once a year. I see that you have, damage from that storm on your panels, and now we need to replace them and recycle the old ones and actually reuse the precious metals in them and reuse the glass and make sure that we reuse as many pieces of this as possible, because if not, it's detrimental to the environment. I'm incredibly excited about working for a company that's doing something like that, And so my official title will be VP of Direct Sales. And basically what I'm doing right now is building home service companies, sales orgs, solar companies, roofing companies, a dealer program that they can plug into and offer their clients these products and obviously make a commission on and do the responsible thing, and be able to do it all from their phones, do it nationwide, which is the most important part, which is what I'm incredibly excited about. Just the scale of this thing, nationwide is the beginning, worldwide is the end for sure. Well, with the way Elon's going, hopefully space wide, but we'll see. It's sobering, that, well, and it is. It's the stage of life that I'm in right now. Somebody's dream is bigger than mine, right? That's just the truth. Somebody else's dream is bigger than mine. And I'm okay with that. I am very incredibly focused on the stage that my kids and me and my wife are in right now, which we're in the middle school to high school stage. So if you think about, parents like us that have had kids very close together, they're 10 to 14. It's because we're in birthday season. Normally they're 3 years apart. And my youngest is about to go is going to go in sixth grade next year. My oldest is going to be a freshman in high school. And so we've got about 8 years of this before they're out of the home. Me and my wife will be 46 and we'll have no kids in the house. And that time in our life will be over, And for all of my 20s that I spent traveling, opening up different offices and pouring everything I had into all these different people and clients and businesses and relationships, I missed out on what was most important. And this is cliche, 100% cliche. But granted, I was not listening to podcasts like this 10 years ago. And so for the 8 years that I have left, I'm going to put God and my family first, right? And that's what this decision is based on. If I was 46 years old right now, and I knew that my kids were on their own and they were going to college, or they were starting their own businesses, or they were starting their careers, you know what I mean? Then I would 100% decline this offer. But right now, it is an offer that makes sense for me and my family right now. And so I'm excited about executing it. I'm excited about taking you guys on that journey, to a degree. Trust me, I don't want to inundate you with what's going on at one company. I want to inundate you with what you should be doing to build great sales teams. And so, like I said, back to one episode a week, and they're going to be solo episodes, and they're going to be around concepts that are actually happening in real time for somebody that's actually executing a sales team or a sales program with a client or myself inside of the company that I'm working with. And so I'm excited to bring that to you guys and continue to bring it. This is episode 314. I just so grateful that we're able to take it this far. And look, like we're probably at like, I don't know, 48,000 downloads or so. I was looking at one of my friends the other day, and yes, I compare to one of my friends the other day. He's at like freaking 350,000 downloads, and he's like maybe 60 or 70 episodes in. Granted, he's got a whole lot more money behind his, and his is probably just better. You know what I mean? Just being honest. Like mine's very niche specific. Like people don't come here unless they want to learn about building sales teams. Let's just be honest. Maybe they stay for the Texas biz dad stuff, but for the most part, they come and learn about building sales teams. And so, but it's been a really cool journey, and it's had its phases. When I started, I had my sales org. The 200s and 300s, it was all about consulting, and now the 300s are going to be all about this phase. And I'm excited to bring you guys on for the journey. So as always, let's get building.